Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of It Depends podcast. This one is one of my special ones because I get to hang out with two of the most brilliant analysts that I work with. And the reason I say that is because both of them are deeply immersed and hands-on people, and they actually do a lot of development work themselves. So they bring a lot of depth to the work that analysts do. All three of us were at Google Cloud Next last week in Las Vegas, and we got to learn from Google Cloud what's the latest and greatest in their world. So today's episode is to talk about our learnings and key announcements that we came across at Google Cloud Next. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jani. Jani, can you please introduce yourself?
First of all, Sanjeev, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be a part of this podcast.
Likewise.
So my name is Janakiram, short name Jani, based out of Hyderabad, India. Been an independent analyst for about 13 years now.
Wow.
I primarily focus on cloud native infrastructure and Gen AI as a workload. Prior to becoming an independent analyst, I was with AWS for a few years, and before that, a decade plus at Microsoft. So that's my background.
And you are, by the way, a Microsoft MVP and a regional director. Is that correct?
That's right.
And you also have your own lab with GPUs at home?
Yes. So I have a lab with a few GPU machines and a cluster. So I do run quite a bit of foundation models and LLMs on Kubernetes. So that's my current focus area.
That is amazing. Sam, you are extremely popular in the AI world. In the data space, a lot of people may not know you as much. Can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be on the show with you, Sanjeev. My name is Sam Charrington. I'm the founder of Twiml. Twiml is a name that comes from the Twiml AI podcast, which is a show that I launched about 8 years ago. Johnny and I have been independent analysts for about the same time, it seems. It's been about 13 years for me as well. I've been focused on the nexus of cloud, AI, and data kind of from the very beginning of that journey. But about 8 years ago, I recognized that something was in the air with AI and decided to kind of pivot and go all in on that topic. And it's been really exciting recently to see all of that come to fruition. The podcast, now we're coming up on 700 episodes, over 17 million downloads. And I really focus in on both core technology as well as enterprise application.
And what does TWIML stand for?
This week in machine learning and AI is where that acronym comes from.
I see. I see. Very nice. And where are you based?
I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri, but like most analysts, all over the place most of the time.
Yes. Yeah, I see Sam and Johnny frequently. I saw Johnny just maybe 3, 4 weeks ago in Paris at KubeCon, and I see Sam at all the well-known, popular analyst invited conferences. So let's get started. So Johnny, I'm going to start with you. If you were to summarize the key announcements, what were the three biggest takeaways from Google Cloud Next?
So Google utilized this conference to make some statements, some bold statements. So the first one is a lot of emphasis on homegrown models and homegrown chips. So the Axion announcement, the ARM-based CPU, and then the new family of TPUs, and the whole AI hypercomputer, all the way to the topmost developer experience. That entire stack is pretty comprehensive. So the first takeaway is Google's emphasis on their own hardware and their own foundation models. The second is the whole investment around agents. With co-pilots, assistants catching up, Google wanted to really get into that and it's agents everywhere. So there are first-party agents that Google is now calling as Gemini branded, Gemini Code Assist, Cloud Assist, Gemini for security, and so on. And then they are opening up kind of a marketplace for partners and customers to build their own agents, and that is a big deal. So that is the second key takeaway. And third one, which is a bit surprising, is early events that Google has showcased and demonstrated, like Mercedes-Benz, Bayer, Orange, Best Buy, while rest of the hyperscalers are talking about early prototypes and pilots. Google has taken a bold step to actually talk about how their customers, enterprise customers, are using Gen AI, and seeing that on stage during the keynote was pretty impressive. So those are the three key takeaways for me.
And that is great. We'll be talking a lot about these key takeaways. And before we do that, Sam, how about yourself?
Mine were similar, although phrased a little bit differently. I think one of the things that really struck me was kind of the completeness of their story or of their vision. As Johnny mentioned, they have offerings in the space from low-level infrastructure, chips, hardware, through to machine learning models, through to fully complete experiences in the form of these agents that they demonstrated. And likewise, they're able to tell the story from an innovation perspective about core research in AI from DeepMind all the way through to productive use on the part of enterprises. And so the fullness of that story and for folks who have been watching Google's AI story evolve over the years, like the degree to which it's the pieces are starting to fall into place, that was a big takeaway for me. Another was in the domain of RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. RAG has become a key enterprise use case or application for large language models for a couple of reasons. One is that it promises to help address some of the hallucination challenges that are inherent in large language models. But second, it provides enterprises a way to incorporate their domain data into an LLM's generation process. So it's a key use case. And Google now has demonstrated or is offering 3 distinct ways for organizations to get to RAG, which is it's simple in principle, but complicated in practice. And so they've got offerings at the low level where you can consume their infrastructure and models and build it up from scratch. They announced support for 2 software products, Llama Index and LangChain. So now you can build at a somewhat higher level to do this. And they've got their search offering, which allows you to build a RAG-like experience at a very high level. And so that was, I think, a key moment for me, is seeing that they're really going all in and helping organizations deliver these experiences with language models. And then the third, Johnny mentioned this, but they wove customer stories throughout the hour-and-a-half keynote on the first day, and they did a very good job at varying both the depth and the use cases that they covered with the customers, including folks like Bayer and Best Buy and Discover Financial and others.
That is great. I love the way you drill down into RAG at various different levels. So Google seems to be giving this optionality. You can do it at low level using native primitives. You can use third-party ones like LangChain and Llama Index, or you can do it even in Google Search, and then of course customer stories. For me, what really stood out was that I really feel that last year Google had laid out a vision. In fact, I'd written a white paper on Google Cloud Next 2023, where I had created this OSI 7-layer stack. And this year, I thought it all came together. I think GCP really, or Google Cloud really showed up as a full stack unified platform. I won't repeat everything you said, but all the way from chips, foundation models, databases, machine learning environments, all the way up to the agents. What really amused me was that in all the other conferences we go to, there are a whole cast of people who come from other parts of the industry. But this time we didn't see any of that. There were a few customers like CEO of Uber, but they're all videos. So Google didn't really need a Jensen Huang or Sam Altman or somebody of that stature to tell the story. They literally did live demos, several of them, with their product managers and leaders, which is risky. We know live demos can be risky, and they were just doing them one after another. Right?
Yeah, I agree. It was very impressive.
Yeah, and in this whole story about talking about agents, they didn't feel the need to talk about Kubernetes or multi-cloud story. The picks and shovels, like they say, were moved aside. So that was, I think, a very interesting shift in a keynote. So, all right, so let's move on to this topic about agents. So, Sam, I'm going to start with you, because Google made this hard pivot to AI. Are we pushing the AI story too hard? Could we be setting ourselves up for disappointment by raising the expectation so high? What do you feel is justified today for AI?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and I think it's an interesting one because, in my view, we are both AI is, or generative AI in particular, is kind of both overhyped and underappreciated at the same time. I think to a large degree, there's no escaping the hype cycle, right? We're going to go through this hype cycle where we overhype things, we make them sound easier, we kind of push the envelope of what we say can be done. And at the same time, you can't sit back and watch, because this is the period in the journey where we're learning and experimenting and trying things. And eventually, the value, kind of the core value that we, build on later shakes out, right? So I think there is quite a bit of hype. I hear a lot of kind of off the cuff comments about, even in the context of agents. I spoke to several of folks on the Google side about agents, and there were two distinct conversations. One variety of conversation was talking about agents in the context of these autonomous things that will work on your behalf and interact with other systems and things like that. Almost a sci-fi or a forward-looking view of what an agent is. And then there's another view that's a lot more grounded in where the technology is today, and that is, an agent is in their context is a kind of a dialogue-based experience or an interface to an application. And so to me, that really exemplified, the very different kind of takes that you can have on the same technology. And that's kind of where we are with Gen AI right now. There's certainly a lot of promise. There's a lot of value that's being delivered. It's not all promise. We've seen that in other technology waves. But I always advise folks to really focus on kind of core use cases that can drive short-term value as they're building towards bigger picture.
I really like that advice. I have told this to people, this whole concept of AI changing so fast, let's wait and see, is a kiss of death. Don't do that. Keep experimenting and improving it. I actually have an interesting example I give. I was telling, there was this national news of this car dealership from General Motors that put a chatbot, and somebody asked a question, which is the best truck to buy? And the answer came back Ford F-150. And people were like, see, I told you, you don't do it. And I was like, no, I mean, that's a wrong approach. Kudos to the car dealership to have put a chatbot. What they now need to do is learn the lesson and ground their results
Refine.
from their own data set. And then,
Mhm.
So anyway, I'm on my rant here, but Jani, how about you? What's your take on this pivot to AI?
Yeah, so I look at Gen AI as the new battlefield,
Hmm.
particularly between the top three hyperscalers. There is fierce competition.
Yeah.
Who delivers bigger, better model, developer experience, platform. So we have seen that with Microsoft Build. Last AWS reInvent was all about generative AI. And I'm actually not surprised that Google is pushing it hard. And actually, Google is very well positioned. Let me qualify that statement. So uh, if you look at the top three cloud providers, who is equipped with a solid
Hmm.
deep learning research arm, right? Whether it is Google Brain or DeepMind, Google has a very solid backing of research, and it's very unique uh, compared to Microsoft Research or Microsoft Research plus OpenAI. Google DeepMind and Google Brain have contributed more to the AI community uh, with some seminal work and papers, including the attention is all you need paper. So,
Right.
so that is the very important aspect, which is the core differentiating factor for Google.
Mhm.
So, research backed platforms and research backed environment. Number one. Number two, Google has been one of the first to build their own ASIC for AI acceleration in the form of TPUs, tensor processing units. So they have that in place, and then they have a lot of data. They have access to more data than anyone else. So they are well positioned to train foundation models and leverage the
Good point.
research that is done by DeepMind, optimize it for the hardware that they
Yeah.
have. So if you ask me, out of all the three cloud providers, I think Google is well positioned because of these three factors. Number one, very strong, proven, game-changing research. Number two is their hardware innovation and hardware advancements. Number three is sheer access to data, which can be fundamental to delivering foundation models.
I had great points. I love this whole how Google came out with a transformer paper. I personally I feel that OpenAI actually took the lead and ran with it. And we've seen this over and over. Kubernetes, same story. Even going way back to Hadoop, when the Hadoop companies took the lead. But I feel that AI is such a big reset in the cloud space, and Google is finally wresting control and leadership. I think its growth is accelerating because it is now working around all their research and really bringing this innovation to the market. So we might see actually that the Google's growth is going to be quite good from now on, in my opinion.
But Sanjeev, I have a point to add here.
Sure.
So, one is research.
Mhm.
No doubt, Gemma, Gemini, and a lot of other models that Google is coming out with are pretty superior. But it all depends on how it translates to field execution.
Correct.
Uh, Innovation, research, productization is one,
Right.
and then field operations and field sales and marketing is another. So my guess is uh, it all depends on how well Google
Mhm.
translates this innovation and investment into field enablement. If their solution architects, if their sales team, if their pre-sales
Yeah,
engineers cannot translate this into business value and articulate this story in a compelling form, then none of this matters. So it's
100%.
very important that Google gets the execution right and
Yeah,
field enablement right. That's a big, big challenge.
Yeah,
correct.
I totally agree with that. And I would add a couple of things. One is something that I see as a risk. The other is something that I see as a positive. And I guess I'll start with the positive first, and that is it's not just field from the perspective of, their field engineers, their consultants. It's increasingly about ecosystem and mobilizing third-party resources and consultants. And that was one of the things that I thought that they did a very good job at. I think within the first 10 seconds of TK's keynote, there was a partner slide up. It's always a good sign when a large vendor recognizes the importance of partners. And there were all kinds of partner summits and meetings that were happening over the course of this event to try to ensure that extended channel was kept up to date with all of the things that Google was talking about at the event.
Yeah.
The risk, and this is true for both customers as well as partners, as well as the internal field, as Jani was suggesting, is that when you are delivering new capabilities, offerings, products at the rate that Google and other AI players as well has been doing, it's very hard for these ecosystems to kind of keep up and adapt to. And I think that this puts a lot of responsibility on them to innovate on some of the quote unquote softer side. So education, training, communication, it's going to be very, very important for them.
Yeah, great. I think you both make extremely important point. I think this is such a important point. How well does Google execute? It's great to have amazing research. In fact, I was just reading, they have a new research, this technique called infinity attention, which basically says that the tokens that come into LLMs can be infinite in size. But what good does that do, and what is the benefit of that? Is that really efficient to have a million token Gemini 1.5 Pro? And I think we saw a demonstration of that, how they're using it. They actually did a live demo on day 2 developer keynote. And so in this paper I was reading, they can now double, triple the size of tokens, but keep the memory and the compute footprint the same. So it's very interesting. There's so much research going on. But I want to move on to, let's step away from Google Cloud Next itself. I want to ask you, Jani, what is the impact of what Google is doing to the overall ecosystem of AI or cloud?
Right. So, I've been representing platform companies. I've been with Microsoft and then AWS. And when I was actually watching TK's Thomas Kurian's keynote, it took me back to some of my days at Microsoft. All these platform companies basically target 3 different entities, and these 3 are the core segments that matter the most and that make a huge impact. Number 1, developers. Number 2, the partner ecosystem. Number 3 is enterprise and public sector. And looking at Google's current strategy, they are basically following the playbook set by other platform vendors and some of the proven approaches. So for developers, they are making Vertex AI very simple. I actually looked at Bedrock, SageMaker, Azure ML, Azure OpenAI, but Vertex AI, I think, is much more developer friendly. It's very well structured. The developer experience is very good. So they're targeting developers and they want to attract the developer community to play with GenAI, and they are lowering the barrier with GenAI Studio, no code, low code approach, and so on. So that is for the developers. Second is partners. Now, partners basically mean ISVs, independent software vendors, who will develop and build applications on top of Google's infrastructure and platforms. And the other is SIs, system integrators, who actually sell and deliver solutions on top of Google Stack. So this whole agent story fits in very well there. It's going to create a new ecosystem and enables partners to create agents that are very vertically integrated, highly customized, and targeting specific industries. And just like there is a whole ecosystem and a marketplace around Android apps, in the form of Google Play Store, and Chrome extensions, Chrome add-ons. You can actually visualize a marketplace for agents, and that's going to empower the partner ecosystem to contribute and build on Google. That's huge. That is basically targeting the partner ecosystem. The third one is squarely focusing at enterprise. So again, what actually missed in Thomas Kurian's keynote is the innovations that go beyond the GenAI platform. Some of the things that they are doing with Google Distributed Cloud, previously known as Anthos, they're actually bringing GenAI to the edge and multi-cloud. You can actually run Gemma in the Google Distributed Cloud appliances. And that's a big deal. Unfortunately, it didn't get enough attention, but some of those things, and then enabling vector capabilities across all the databases, and bringing generative AI into Looker. All these are squarely targeting enterprises and lowering the barrier for enterprises to adopt and embrace GenAI. So bottom line, the very clear messaging that came out of Google Cloud Next is they are attacking developers through Vertex AI and no-code, low-code approach. They are creating a brand new partner ecosystem with agents and the Copilot equivalents, and they are going with enterprise story, targeting large enterprises. And entire messaging was, we are no more meant for startups and mid-sized companies, but we are right there. We are going after enterprises. Look at Mercedes-Benz, look at Bayer, look at Best Buy. We are an enterprise company, and we enable enterprises to consume GenAI. So that's the key takeaway for me, from whatever I have seen.
Yeah, very, very nice. But it's so amazing listening to you. I can get this feel, the enormous breadth of changes, because it's agents, and you're also talking about the multi-cloud and or actually hybrid, and so it's the impact is quite big. I want to ask Sam, how about you?
Yeah, I think of it in terms of where they're kind of setting the standard in terms of ease of use or accessibility of technology. And there were a few areas that jump out to me at this point in time. I mentioned RAG and the various ways that they're making that more accessible to enterprises. I think that is a big deal. In addition, they announced at Google Cloud Next Grounded RAG, which I'm not sure got enough attention. This is the ability to not just ground or incorporate results from enterprise data, but also from the Google Knowledge Graph, so the search index. There are, multiple startups that are playing in the space, companies like Perplexity and U.com. And this, one feature, potentially kills, startups like that, or at least commoditizes that kind of experience where you've got search results that are integrated together with a large language model. So I think that was one key area, the 1 million context length with Gemini. We've known about that for, months now, so it's old news, but it is broadly available now. I've used it and I was not disappointed. It is a very good model. And I think that's another area where they're kind of setting the bar. We've talked quite a bit about this comprehensive story from chips to experiences. I think, all the other vendors in the space are going to need to have at least or a similarly comprehensive story to really be competitive. And I think they are also telling an open story from the perspective of, they've got these very strong first-party models, but they're also giving customers easy access to third-party models, and they're doing a decent job so far of kind of threading the needle of how they promote what they have, as well as the offerings of the third parties. And so I think that that openness, I think, is also something that they're, bringing to the ecosystem, and that will have lasting, at least I hope will have lasting implications.
Yeah, very interesting. I like the way, Sam, you said this commoditization uh, is happening. And in fact, I felt that what Google is doing is that they're making this process of creating agents very simple and quick. So an app developer can do it. In fact, it's amusing for me to see Vertex AI, which is a ML platform, is was targeted for data scientists, but now it seems like app developers are using it more than data scientists, and they're adding all these features. Like they added this thing called Auto SXS, which stands for side by side. So now they've added model evaluation. So now they've got these agent builders and all of these features that are making this creation of agents easier. Since I cover the data space mainly, I was very interested in seeing what is a data agent. They did a demo of having a natural language interface to build pipelines in data management, but then when an app developer uses it, they don't necessarily know what the column names are. I mean, they should not really be at that level. So in the data agent, it uses looker semantics, which I found very interesting. But then after you create the pipelines, then the data agent goes to Google Workspaces for collaboration. So it's interesting, and it's all interwoven over Gemini, the LLM. And so this whole agent story, I thought, is going to get quite a lift after this. The other thing that I also found interesting was something that BigQuery is doing by embedding Gemini. What they're saying is that why you shouldn't really have a separate AI stack and a data stack. There should be only one stack. In fact, I called it an intelligent data platform where you've got structured and unstructured stored together, but then you have different engines. If it is audio, video, a PDF, then you've got an LLM that can extract some entities, do feature engineering, transcribe it, translate it. And then with vector embeddings, you are now able to do similarity search on both your structured, unstructured, batch, and streaming data. So I think we are seeing this consolidation, uh, which to me is really critical because we've done an amazing job for structured data, but not for unstructured data. Would you agree? This could be quite a new way of unifying types of data.
Yeah, absolutely. AWS has also attempted something similar. They call it as generative BI, where they bring in natural language into QuickSight, and you
Yes,
can basically, yeah. So this is going to be interesting. They are embedding Gemini into almost every product, including BigQuery. So
yeah,
earlier bringing predictive AI into databases was very natural and logical, but getting generative AI into databases is going to be very interesting. It basically uh, takes away the complexity of SQL, where you have to write complex group queries and
yeah.
join queries and all of that. It'll just take the complexity away, and you can connect the data that is living in Google Cloud Storage, BigQuery, Cloud SQL, and you can basically fire up one natural language query that brings data from all these sources and feeds your RAG pipeline. It's a pretty powerful scenario.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've been building towards this for a long time, right? If you think about companies like Cloudera and others that have been talking about data lakes and lake houses and all these things, like we've been trying to pull together structured, semi-structured, unstructured data and give people the ability to operate on it in a unified way. Streaming, just adds another dimension of complexity. I think BigQuery is one of the, kind of the closest, strongest proof points that, we could get there. But it's still very, very complex, and it's not, the use cases aren't, fully fleshed out. The tooling isn't fully fleshed out. I'm rooting for them. But there's still a long road to travel in my view.
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
and Sam, you're absolutely right. We are very, very early in our journey, but it's and a lot of these are incremental steps. Like before Google Cloud Next, I used to say you have three options to personalize AI: training, tuning, and RAG. But don't do training. Training a model is just a concept that is today not even possible for an end user organization. Leave it to
That's still good
OpenAI,
advice.
Mistral. But then I saw examples where, people were saying, well, if BigQuery has all this data that they've extracted from an audio and video file, so I think there are incremental steps to create small language models. And I think a lot of people are saying the future is in a combination of small language models or fine-tuned models with RAG to get higher accuracy. Would you say so?
I think that I don't know that I saw that particular demo. I think the kind of vector that you described of training to fine tuning to
Sure.
RAG in orders of decreasing difficulty or complexity is still what I see.
Yeah.
And I think at Next, what I saw was really, technology to support and products to support all three of those. So on the RAG side, I've talked about that. I'm very excited about the varying offerings and keep coming back to that because it's, RAG is the use case that I, am asked about the most nowadays for a
Yeah.
while now. On the fine tuning, the issue has historically been if I'm using an API or accessing a model via service, then I'm stuck with whatever the model was trained on. And Google for a while now has offered through technology that they call adapters, underlying it's called technology like LoRa and QLoRa and others. Parameter efficient fine tuning is the phrase I was looking for, that allow you to allow them to kind of manage customer specific adapters on these large language models. And then, further back, all of the infrastructure that they announced, the new TPUs, for example, have huge implications on, on training, which is essentially a cost game for most. It's hugely expensive to do. And so anything that you can do to bring down the cost from an infrastructure perspective is a huge boon to those who train. But I still say, if you're an enterprise, that's the last place you should be looking in terms of training. Very few have done it, and for good reason. It's hard, and the skills
Correct.
to do it are few and far between, and very, very expensive.
Yeah, very good advice. Johnny, anything else stood out to you from the keynotes and other sessions?
Yeah, actually, what I found is Thomas Kurian's keynote and even the second day keynote, they ignored some of the critical differentiating factors and critical innovations that came into core infrastructure. While GenAI is important, it is the overarching theme, it's a competitive differentiating factor, but I actually thought it was not a good idea to just dump all the innovations and advancements and new features that came out of the core compute and core infrastructure. If I were in any of those teams working on storage or GKE or GCE, I would be very disappointed because none of my work is highlighted during the keynotes. There have been ton of advancements. 280 new features have been announced at Google Cloud
Yes.
Next.
Out of 600. Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of things were not even talked about. For example, do you know Google has a data processing unit very similar to the Project Nitro or the Nitro system of AWS? It's called Titanium. It offloads hypervisor, security, network operations, and storage operations into a dedicated chip. It's called Titanium. And Axion and Titanium work together to
Yeah.
deliver brand new compute and storage capabilities. There is a new capability called hyperdisk pools, which basically decouple storage from compute, and it's a game changer for running inference workloads. And when you take these hyperdisk to GKE nodes, you can actually preload models without downloading them on the fly, and that's going to increase the performance and throughput of delivering LLMs. They also launched a new inference server called Jetstream that is optimized for LLMs and optimized for TPUs. No mention of that in the keynotes. So I think Gen AI overshadowed a lot of innovations that Google has done. And I strongly believe that Google should do justification to their some of the core investments and innovations like compute engine, Kubernetes engine. After all, Kubernetes is something that they invented and put it out in the wild. So, and this is the 10th anniversary of
Yep.
Kubernetes. And personally, as a cloud native enthusiast and cloud native practitioner, I'm disappointed that Thomas Kurian didn't even mention the success of Kubernetes and the evolution of GKE and some of the enhancements. So that's what stood out for me in the keynote. Not
Very
mentioning
interesting.
other
Yeah.
things.
I've learned so many things
So,
from you just now that I didn't know. And
Sanjeev,
I was,
what's funny is that, as you mentioned earlier, we've been going to these same conferences for years. And
yeah.
5 years ago, I'd be griping at Jani, AI is going to be huge. It's going to be so important. They spent all this time talking about Kubernetes and AI got 5 minutes in this keynote.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so frustrating. And now the tables have turned, Jani.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. Yes. And so, and what about you, Sam? Like any other thing that stood out, like from the
The
keynote?
thing that stood out for me, I think, is the root cause of the thing that troubled Johnny. And that is, I've been following these conferences for a long time. One of the ways that I take notes and share what I'm learning is live tweeting. And I've never felt so overwhelmed at a conference before. My estimate is that there was an announcement every 5 seconds during Thomas Kurian's day one keynote. It was
Oh my
insane.
God.
And, you know, I knew all of the announcements beforehand, and it was still hard to keep up. And so I think, it speaks to the
Yeah.
volume of things that they announce, but I think it also, creates in me a degree of empathy for, customers and partners and folks that, don't spend all of their time following the industry and Google and what they're doing, and just how uh challenging this time is to really stay ahead and stay on top of the pace of innovation. And Google's just one vendor at most of these companies, if not all
Yeah.
of these companies, right?
Correct.
And innovation is happening at this rate across the board.
Yeah. And to imagine that this conference came only 8 months since the last one. In 8 months.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. And when
Yeah.
I sat through the keynote, TK's keynote, my first thought was that we went so much on agents. I see there must be some strategy at work here where Google Cloud management decided, let's focus on the benefits of agents and let's hide away all the picks and shovels. And I felt in that process, there's so much important stuff got hidden, like what you're saying. For example, this thing called Google Distributed Cloud, which was Anthos, which runs on premises, that is using Kubernetes. Vertex runs on that. Alloy DB now with its vector engine support. I found through just a chat with Garrett Casimir cross-cloud materialized view for Omni was announced. And we were like, wait, why is that a byline or a sideline announcement? It is such an important thing that you can do materialized view on BigQuery data in AWS and join it with Google Cloud. But kudos to Google Cloud if that's the strategy they've chosen to talk about the benefits of agents. But there's a lot. Go ahead.
What that really said to me, you know as well as I do that a lot of time goes into orchestrating these keynotes, and it's not random. It's a very closely orchestrated process. What it said to me was that what they thought was most important at this particular point in time was inspiring customers and conveying this vision of what is possible with Gen AI, in particular, when you pull together a lot of different pieces. And that was what was most interesting to me about the agent demos. For example, they announced a creative agent or demoed a creative agent. I'm not quite sure if it was an announcement. The creative agent is essentially this Gen AI experience for creatives like at ad agencies. And in this demo, they incorporated in some of the Imagen lower level technology announcements that they had made just moments before. So the creative in this demo asked Gemini to pull together a storyboard for an ad campaign, and then said, oh, I like this idea, create a moving image for our new tent product. And it really did, I think, serve as a way to make some of this low level technology kind of come to life. And I can only think that that is what they saw as being most important at this particular moment in time. You have all of these customers together. You've got this moment of energy and excitement. You're starting to talk more to executives because this is on, every executive agenda. How do we inspire them and give them a vision for what's possible with all of these pieces that we're bringing to the table?
Since we are talking about creative stuff, there's also Google Vids. So, Sam, Jani, what is Google Vids?
So Google Vids. Go ahead, Jani.
Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I had a chance at the on the expo floor to talk to the product owner for Google Vids. It is essentially, if you think about the Google Docs suite, where you've got slides and sheets and docs, it is a new offering in that suite that is for creating videos. The idea is that you can, use Gen AI to describe a video and get a kind of a skeleton of some video that you might want to share, maybe for internal communication. But it's my first thought when I saw it was that it's like a response to OpenAI Sora, which was a model that can create videos based on a description. But what was interesting is that it's not really trying to be that. It's what they're trying to do is democratize the, video as a means for communication in the enterprise and use Gen AI as kind of a leverage point for doing that. So you can kind of, kickstart a video using description and templates and things like that. But then you have the full ability to edit that video in a kind of a web-based experience, just like you would be editing a slide in Google Slides. And, use it again, kind of use it as the starting place for, a rich experience that you're trying to create, including, then recording a voiceover or a video, kind of a headshot video to explain, what it is that you've seen. It's kind of an interesting product. As I understand it, they are charging, it's kind of an uplift to your Google Suite. I don't know if once you get into enterprise math, it all gets muddy and maybe no one's going to be paying for it separately. But
Yeah.
it sounds like it's meant to be an additional or a new SKU, which is kind of an interesting approach. I thought it was, overall, I thought it was kind of promising, but early, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how they evolve
Yeah.
it.
Jani, what about you? And you were going to say something about vids.
Yeah, so for me, Wits is more like glorified slides with a little bit of animation thrown in to turn it into a movie.
Okay.
I think Google wants to compete with some of these emerging AI-based video presentation suites like InVideo. There are a bunch of them. So throwing that into Google Workspace and making it available to enterprise customers to add motion graphics to slides, I think that's what Wits is all about.
I'm sure workspace is very important to Google's strategy because AWS doesn't have anything like that, although Microsoft is way above Google when it comes to this collaboration suite. So, did you both get a chance to talk to any customers or partners? Any thoughts, Sam?
I had a chance to speak to the AI 21 Labs folks. Was an interesting conversation. Although even more insightful than the specifics of the conversation was kind of a throwaway comment that was made in response to a question. They also presented at our analyst day session, and another analyst, I forget who, asked them, they asked them about the experience of partnering with multiple vendors, Google and, AWS, for example, and, what that was like for them as a company working in the context of all this innovation that we're talking about. And they described it, the CEO described it as being like a bit like a roller coaster or like uh, kind of a flip flop. Like, so, one will come up with a model and really push the envelope. And then, in time for the next vendors conference, their thing's going to be on top, and it's kind of going back and forth. And as a startup, and a partner that partners with multiple vendors, they've got to navigate working with these different technologies as they kind of advance and recede relative to one another. So I thought that was an interesting context. I did learn a lot about that company outside or beyond Google and that relationship. What they're trying to do is create task-specific models, kind of like the generic language model, but focused on a particular task, such as generating RFPs or responding to RFPs or analyzing contracts for a law firm. Their vision is that as opposed to using generic language models or every organization training a language model, they're going to create a family of use case specific language models and build a business around that.
Very
I thought it was
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, Jani.
Yeah, interestingly, Ori Goshen, who is the CEO of AI 21 Labs, I spend most of my time with him. He was explaining me his new open model, which is called Jamba, which is very popular. It's a mixture of experts, and he spent a lot of time explaining me the differences between traditional LLMs versus the Jamba LLM, which is based on a new architecture called Mamba, and how they leveraged Google TPU infrastructure. So that was a very interesting conversation. And of course, he mentioned some of the things that Sam has covered, like these task-specific models and their differentiating factor, and other things. Interestingly, both of us spoke to the same partner.
That is so interesting. And is Mamba this new technique beyond Transformer? I mean, is that the idea? It's like Transformer did amazing thing to kick off this whole LLM craze, and now there's a new technique. Is that what it is?
I am yet to completely understand, but what I derived from the discussion is it is more efficient than traditional transformers.
Hmm.
And it is a technique to basically pack more punch into the same size of LLMs, but give it
I
more
see.
capabilities.
Yeah,
So it is a more efficient architecture, which is superior to transformers.
I see. Got it. Very interesting. I had a very interesting one-on-one with Sabre. Sabre is this big airline ticketing backend system. They were in 17 data centers, 40,000 servers, 50 petabytes of data, and they migrated it to Google Cloud. A lot of it, you know how when we buy the tickets, we used to talk about the PNR number. So that
Mhm.
PNR database has traditionally been on mainframe, but they've moved it to Google Spanner. So that was an interesting. And then in terms of partners, I want to point this out because this is something I found really fascinating. I stopped by to see some of my friends at this master data management MDM company called Reltio. And I was like, so what are you doing with LLMs? So as an MDM vendor, their biggest task is to do entity resolution and find out, there's a common customer, although they may have 5, 10 different aliases and names, and just hone in to that golden record. So they've been using machine learning for the longest time. But what they told me was that the problem with machine learning is that as the data changes, the shape of data changes, you have to constantly retrain the model. So now they are moving to an LLM and making this complete pivot and going production with it because they find there's higher accuracy in using an LLM than there is in using an ML model. So that's interesting. I have so many more topics that we can go on for another hour, but we've reached the end. I want to thank you so much. So amazing to have you both give your perspective on this podcast. Thank you once again for coming and taking time from your busy calendar. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sanjeev.
Thanks, Sanjeev.
Thanks. Bye.